Welcome to the very first episode of the And One More Thing podcast with your host, myself, Casey Lennon. Now, first episodes are just going to be me chopping it up with you guys about all things NBA, basketball, what's going on around the association. And then eventually, once I kind of get a hand of this and get a flow of it after a few episodes, I'm going to invite on some of my friends around the area, back home as well in Wisconsin. Just for some context, I'm located here in Nashville. Unfortunately, there is no NBA team here. Memphis and Atlanta are the closest away. But me, being a diehard Bucks fan, could give a shit about either of those franchises. So, tend to focus on just what's going on around the league nowadays. I watch any game I can. I do work nights about 5 days a week, so it is kind of hard to catch up with them, but I do my best. Now, with all that being said, today's episode is sponsored by... No, I'm just kidding. Hopefully we get one of those soon, maybe in a couple months. Today's episode, we're going to focus on the season's biggest disappointments, surprises, kind of random things that happened as well. Now, for those of you listening who do know about the NBA already, there is kind of a approach I could go with this. I could talk about maybe the Cavaliers, how they're off to an insane start and almost finish to the season, right? Like they've only lost 10 games. It's absolutely fucking insane. I could talk about the Phoenix Suns, how they're a disappointment. The most obvious is the Philadelphia 76ers and how much they've shit the bed this year. But I'm not, because that's boring, and that content's already out there. So I kind of want to take an unorthodox approach here. First off, what the hell is going on with the Charlotte Hornets? Now, they're not a disappointment. It's a surprise to me how much they suck. It's quite ridiculous. I mean, LaMelo Ball, superstar, icon, oozing charisma and aura, as we're saying nowadays. But he's been a loser most of his career. You know, he goes to Australia, doesn't win shit. Goes to the NBA, hasn't won shit. High school, his brothers carried his teams most of the time. He goes to Spire his senior year, lose the championship. I don't even know if they made it. And I know fucking sure they didn't win it, right? So when that's your best player on the franchise and on the team, their tendencies kind of trickle down to everybody else. It's like when you have a shitty boss, not a lot of people are going to be happy at whatever employer you have. If you have a cool boss, a lot of people tend to stay around and work longer there, work harder. It's the same way in the NBA. So when your star player in a players' league has those tendencies, what more can you expect? And it's kind of frustrating seeing the team be this bad this long. They're 28th in points, 26th in assists, 30th in field goal percentage, and 30th in true shooting percentage. But they're 6th in rebounds because they fucking miss so many shots. How are you not going to be 6th in rebounds? The big question is, are they going to move off of LaMelo Ball this summer? Logically, you would think, well, yeah, he probably has some value. Maybe you can get some capital for him. He's still so young. He's locked into a contract here for 4 years around like that $35 to $45 million a year range going up. And yeah, that's honestly not bad value for what he brings to the team. But I don't see Charlotte moving him. So I think this losing is just going to continue. I don't see Charlotte moving him because he's a global brand, and Charlotte's a small market team. They have never had a player of that caliber who attracts so many people since Kemba Walker, and even then, they didn't win shit with Kemba on the team. So it's kind of tough to predict, like, when they will actually have success as long as LaMelo is the best player on the team. Now, maybe Brandon Miller takes a leap next year, maybe averages 25 a game on some more volume. Miles Bridges kind of is what he is. You know, around like that 20-6 range. If he was on a contender, he would not be putting up those numbers. But LaMelo's too important to the season ticket holders, merchandise sales, and like I mentioned, he's just a global brand. So I really can't see Charlotte moving off him. And it surprises me that they wouldn't, and they probably won't. So that's the first team here I want to cover, Charlotte Hornets. Hopefully Tijan Salon, their first-round pick, continues to develop a little bit. You know, he's more of a hustle guy, energy guy, and I think a lot of people were surprised when he was drafted as high as he was, but he's a French young guy, and the NBA fucking loves those guys now. They just know how to play the right way, but they're certainly not going to lead your team to championship outside of like maybe Wembanyama on the Spurs. So if I was a Charlotte fan, I'd be pretty pissed right now, quite honestly. Fun 2K team, but ass to watch. Another crazy stat. When the NBA is at an all-time high in scoring, the month of February, they played 13 games. They scored 99 points a game. That is horrible. Absolutely atrocious. Moving on. My biggest surprise, a little predictable in terms of content-wise, not the team, the Detroit Pistons. What shocks me most about the Pistons is the players they have surrounding their number one guy, Cade Cunningham. Now, Cade has obviously taken a leap. He's averaging 26, 6 and 9. I think it's 46, 36, 86 shooting splits. He's balling for sure. And you can tell he's meant to be one of those high volume guys. He doesn't mind doing it. Very much so Russell Westbrook era, post KD and OKC. The whole team runs around this guy. And it's working for him. They started out really rough this year at 4-14. So that's why I'm saying they're the biggest surprise. Because you could have just chalked up another season. You're like, oh crap, here we go again, Detroit fans. However, we are looking at a team that is 33-15 since that 4-14 start, which sounds absurd to say out loud, quite honestly. You can accommodate this to a lot of things, but the number one thing I want to say is JB Bickerstaff. New coach, new voice for the guys to look up to. It's clearly made an impact and a difference. And like I just mentioned, how LaMelo is more of a, just seems like he doesn't take the game as seriously. He just likes to have fun, doesn't care about winning. Cade, I don't get that vibe from at all. I think Cade's serious. Cade wants to be a leader. He came into the league a leader. And he had a lot of injury-riddled seasons, like 3 of them in a row. He's played 61 out of 66 available games this year. I gave you his stats already. What surprises me the most, though, is the supporting cast around him. They brought in Tim Hardaway from Dallas on an expiring deal. I think he makes $16 or $17 million this year. They signed Malik Beasley for 1 year, $6 million. And then they signed Tobias Harris to a 2-year deal around $50 million. Now, on paper, when I saw that this offseason, I'm like, okay, extra shooting, but what the hell are these guys going to add to this team? Like, they're in their former situations, they weren't doing anything. Tim Hardaway was benched on Dallas because he wanted to be the guy on a team with Luka Doncic on it, which is outright ridiculous. Tobias Harris was an outcast in Philadelphia. It's not saying much because they hate on even their superstars, no matter how good they're playing. That's why Philly's doomed forever. Malik Beasley, though, the biggest surprise to me, and I'm sure a lot of people, I'm a Bucks fan, guys. Last year, in the regular season, he was great. He was great. And we asked him to play kind of a hard role. We didn't have anybody in our backcourt defending. I keep saying we. That's how you know I'm a Bucks fan. We didn't have anybody in the backcourt defending. So Malik Beasley was our primary defender. It's not what he does at all. He's a sniper. So Detroit brought him in, and he's done just that. I believe he's number 1 or 2 in the entire association in three-pointers made this season. Number 1 or 2 is Anthony Edwards, which is honestly even crazier to me. He needs to get in the paint. Seriously. Back to the Pistons, though. Malik Beasley is set for a payday this offseason. You can see him getting a contract anywhere in that $50 to $20 million range, like he got with Minnesota when he was a high-volume shooter and scorer a couple years ago and put up pretty decent numbers. So good for Malik Beasley. He's set to get paid this offseason. I hope he stays in Detroit. I hope he keeps having a great year. Back to JB Bickerstaff, though. A lot of times I think in the NBA, certain coaches are good in certain situations. I compare Mike Budenholzer to this right now at the Phoenix Suns. Coach Bud took over in Atlanta when they had a couple down years and they weren't winning much. And then Bud got him over that hump to be a winning team. JB, clearly best suited as a guy who has a team that was maybe underachieving or just not playing great at all in Detroit. And he's getting them to that winning tier now. Now, I bring up Coach Bud because once he got the Bucks to that winning side, post Jason Kidd mediocrity years, They had a really hard time in the playoffs making adjustments, and that one year they won the title, you can accommodate that to a few things. A lot of teams were injured, and of course, KD's foot is too big, right? And then we have another first-round exit, second-round exit, and then a first-round exit, and then Bud's out. I didn't think Bud to the Suns would work at all because you have a team that's already been winning. What they need now is an X and O's guy, a guy whose voice they respect. That's not what Coach Bud is. JB Bickerstaff found his way into a situation that fits perfectly with Detroit. The team wasn't winning shit. He came in there, provided a new voice. Monty Williams clearly only became the coach of their team because of the contract they handed him. A lot of reports said he just wanted a year off. I believe his wife passed away. Something pretty serious in his family happened. You know, it's understandable. You want to take some time off, refresh your mind, reevaluate. He hopped right back into a coaching, and you can tell he just wasn't great at it. JB comes in, new voice, new leader of the team. They start playing hard. Shout out to the Detroit Pistons. I believe they're in the 6th seed right now and have a very realistic chance of hitting that 4 or 5 seed. I believe the Bucks are at 5. I think Indiana's at 4. Could be the other way around. But if I'm any team in the East, I really don't want to play the Pistons in the first round. They play super hard. They got some dogs on their team. Isaiah Stewart, Ron Holland, the rookie, looks like he would fight anyone in the league. Like, I'm good. I don't want to play them. Moving on, we covered the Pistons, the Hornets. Not really a surprise in terms of their success, but I want to cover the Lakers quick here. I think a lot of people, when the Luka trade happened, just assumed that this was kind of a retool year. Next year, they would get some surrounding pieces in and then kind of really contend then. I did not expect them to be this good right away with the surrounding pieces that they have. Now, they clearly tried to trade for Mark Williams. Who knows why they rescinded that, but it was evident that even the front office thought that they needed to add another piece to their team for them to contend this year. I mean, Jackson Hayes is their starting center. Go on about that for days. But they are 8-4 since the Luka trade with him in the lineup. And they've lost some bogus games to Charlotte, Brooklyn, and maybe one to Atlanta. But going back to LaMelo Ball's inconsistency as a winner, I think LeBron is the main driving force of why this team is succeeding right now. You can clearly tell he gives a shit about defense. Again, it's been a while. And that's rubbing off on the rest of the team. The rest of the team is seeing LeBron give a shit, playing harder. He's not missing weak side rotations. I remember that one clip of Kyle Kuzma literally shoving LeBron into a help side rotation. He got traded the year after, so it says a lot about that. It just seems like LeBron cares, and he really thinks the Lakers have a chance to win this year. And that's why he's going hard. And that is trickling down into the Jared Vanderbilts, the Gabe Vincents, the Rui Hachimuras. All these players on the Lakers, they have a really solid 9-man rotation now. And of course, hats off to JJ Redick on coming in and being one of them ones. So, you go on about he leveraged that situation. Shout out JJ Redick. I feel it's almost a disservice, though, to not cover the Phoenix Suns here as a disappointment. No, I wasn't very optimistic on that roster coming into the season, especially when you have Yusuf Nurkic as your starting center who can't score, can barely pass, can sort of rebound, and sure as fuck can't defend. You're going to have issues, okay? But they don't have any people or guys who like to drive. And it's such a big part of the league is penetrating the paint to collapse help side defenders to kick it out for shots. Now they've made a trade for Nick Richards. You know, Royce O'Neal's a solid player. Ryan Dunn was playing good at the beginning of the year. But going back to that Coach Bud sentiment I made earlier, I just think the players don't respect him. I don't think he's the coach that they should have hired. And then Coach Bud saw the money and took that shit. Can't blame him. And you're in the desert, warm weather. Like, what could go wrong? Well, they're 30-36. They're 2.5 games back of the Mavericks, who are so injury-riddled, they could use me on the court right now, and that's really fucking saying a lot. And they're out of the playoff picture. They're the 11th seed right now. And they just look like every game at the end, they don't want to be there. Now, that could be because they threatened to trade Kevin Durant. Found out about that. not through the front office. KD's always been a moody player. You never really know what's on his mind. You never know if he's happy. Probably top 10 player of all time, if not top 5. But it's just his personality trait. Going back to the LaMelo Ball, personality trait. Leading into his team, not giving a fuck about winning. LeBron, everybody's seeing he's caring now. The other Lakers care now. KD, when he's your best player, and yes, he's better than Devin Booker, let's not get that shit twisted, the other team is going to adopt that same mentality. Also, new owner syndrome. How many times do we have to experience this in the NBA where a new owner comes in and he just fucks shit up immediately? Immediately. Why would you trade for Bradley Beal on a team that already had Devin Booker, somebody in his exact position? Devin Booker's not a natural point guard. We saw them succeed exponentially when they brought in Ricky Rubio for the first time a few years ago. That was a long time ago, maybe 5 or 6. They started to succeed more, right? They bring in Chris Paul. They make a finals run, but they lost. They still made it, though. You know, and I think they tried that with Tyus Jones in that acquisition this summer. But when you have Beal and Booker, one of those guys has to run point guard. They're max players. And then I think their whole season went to shit when they just started moving Bradley Beal to the bench, all the trade rumors. You tell me, would you want to go play for a shitty team when you're getting paid that much if you're Bradley Beal and you have a no trade clause? You can literally say, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying my ass put too, bro. Probably just moved my whole family to Phoenix a year ago. I don't want to move all of them again. Like, it's not my fault. The Wizards GM, I forget his name, Tommy something, offered me that deal. A no trade clause will never be given out for the next 5 to 10 years because of that shit. Hot take here, though. He got that contract on the Wizards. Not even a hot take. He got that contract on the Wizards with a no trade clause. But then he was traded. I think the no trade clause, once you're traded once, should just dissipate. The fact that shit carries over is insane. Bradley Beal would have been gone instantly, if not this season, in the offseason last year as well. So Phoenix is just in a shitty position, and it looks like Kevin Durant's going to get moved this offseason. Houston literally acquired the Phoenix picks with the thought in mind to go get KD. KD has a relationship with Ime Udoka on Houston. I could totally see Şengün or Jalen Green and one of the other Rockets guys going to Phoenix this summer with one of their young promising prospects for Kevin Durant. If I had to predict an exact trade, it's tough because I don't think Şengün's ever going to be a starting center on a finals contending team just because of his lack of mobility and defensive ability. Jokic is the rare standout case, and that's his biggest comparison player, because he's just the best player in the league. Şengün's a top 100 player, maybe. So they're not even in the same boat of ranking-wise. They just have a similar skill set. Jalen Green, I don't even know if he'd get traded because they have Devin Booker. So then you're looking at like Jabari Smith, Tari Eason, Cam Whitmore, Reed Shepherd. So I think it could be a clump of those guys. If I'm Phoenix, maybe I look at Reed Shepherd, point guard. They don't have a fucking point guard. I'm looking at Cam Whitmore, 3. Let me get him in return for KD. Tari Eason, Jabari Smith. One of those guys slide into the 4. And then Phoenix will get their draft picks back. And then that's a solid roster you can build on. If you're Devin Booker, shout out to you for having the patience to stick through that. Just shows he's one of the realest players in the league, because my ass would have requested a trade. I'm like, get me the fuck out of here. What are you guys doing? But I had to cover Phoenix. It would have been a disservice not to do that. Kind of just some honorable mentions here. Now, I know Orlando has been hurt all season. They've had, I think Suggs has missed 31 games, 36 games. Paolo's missed 30 games. Franz has missed 15 games. The Paolo stats are really interesting to me, though. They are a net rating -5 when he plays and a +1 net rating when he doesn't. It kind of screams ball stopper, Julius Randle type-esque player to me. A lot of people thought the Magic would take a leap this year. I did as well. That's normally the trend of young teams coming in. They continuously get better. And you really can't fault them too much because of all the injuries that happen, like I mentioned. But if Paolo, I really hope he continues to develop and he develops his playmaking more so than anything. Because when you watch him play, it feels like I'm watching Carmelo Anthony or Julius Randle or Lord knows, just ball stoppers. And it's not pretty basketball to watch and consume. So that's going to be something to look out for. I think Franz is the Magic's best player, which some might disagree with, but he plays the game the right way. And that's just a fact. Other disappointments, player-wise, I mean, Jabari Smith, kind of covered him a little bit, going to Phoenix potentially this offseason. I think he needs a change of scenery more so than anything. Number 3 pick in the 22 draft. If you guys remember, those of you who consume the NBA on a regular basis, he was projected to be the number 1 pick. Like out of Auburn that whole season. Catch and shoot, 6'11", high release, can move without the ball, can move positionally on defense exceptionally well, and he just hasn't gotten any better. So you can see why the Magic took Paolo number 1. I'm contradicting myself a little bit. You can see why the Thunder took Chet number 2, Chet Holmgren, over him at number 2. Interesting stat about the Thunder this year, 7-0 when Chet scores 20-plus points. I think that's going to matter in the playoffs as well, because when Shea's getting double-teamed and blitzed all the time, it's going to be Jalen Williams and Chet who's got to score. So that's something to look for. But I think Jabari Smith needs to change the scenery. I think Tari Eason is out past him in the rotation. Arsar Thompson's leap as well with Houston. It makes Jabari Smith much more movable, per se. So I think that's something that will happen. I want him to succeed. He's a great player. You can tell he's a good team player. He plays the right way. He's not a ball stopper. So I hope he has a better next couple of years than what he's had. Shout out to Portland and Chauncey Billups. Totally thought they'd just be a lottery team and tank. Now they do have some talent on their roster, but it's weird. You got like 3 centers, DeAndre Ayton, Donovan Clingan, Robert Williams. All those logged up minutes there. Like Denny Avdia, they traded for in the offseason, gave up first-round draft capital for it. That looks like a fucking steal right now. He's playing out of his mind. Scoot Henderson is developing a little bit. He doesn't look absolutely clueless on the court anymore. Anthony Simons is getting buckets. Like, they have a solid team. Tumani Kamara, probably one of the NBA's best 10 defenders at the wing, who Phoenix traded, who they could really fucking use right now. Shout out to Portland, 29-38. I don't think they'll do anything. They can't make the play-in at this point, but positive trajectory for them. If I'm a Portland fan, I'm optimistic. Yeah, you might slide in the lottery a little bit and not have access to one of those top 3 picks, but I think building a winning culture in an organization is exponentially more important than losing year after year. Another surprise, the Utah Jazz. It's not really a too big of a surprise in the aspect of how good they're playing, because they're playing like shit. But I hate teams that continue to just bottom out and tank for high draft capital. And it makes sense. It really does. Like, you understand the principle of it. But you can't build a culture in an organization based on losing. And that's what they're continuing to do. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out over the next 5 to 10 years with that franchise, because no free agent's going to sign there. So it makes sense what they're doing. But it just hurts me as a basketball purist to watch them continue to do that. Clippers surprised me. I thought they'd be under 500. Jeff Van Gundy's clearly had an impact on their defense. He's got them bought in. Ty Lue clearly shows he's one of the NBA's best coaches still. Harden is somehow still getting it done. Not always against the best teams. Against the bad teams, he shows out. He had 50 the other night, which is still crazy to say. But yeah, I would have taken the under on any total they had at the beginning of the season. So I think them starting without Kawhi and building this year and building like a system that doesn't revolve around him was one of the smartest things they could have done. And Norman Powell said in the offseason when they lost Paul George, addition by subtraction. Norman Powell's going ham this year. I think he's averaging 24 or 25, almost an all-star. One of the weirdest career trajectories ever. Bucks traded him away too, 44th overall pick. What the fuck? I think that wraps up the very first episode. I know I talked pretty fast, gave you guys a bunch of thoughts. Something I do want to do at the end of every episode is give you, like, for those of you who gamble, sports props, NBA specifically, maybe you're on FanDuel. We're out here in Tennessee. It's legal. For those of my friends in Wisconsin, though, where prop betting is still legal, a couple ideas for you tonight. Bucks Lakers, 6:30. Taking the over on points, 224.5. I don't think anybody on the Bucks can guard Luka. I don't think anybody on the Lakers can guard Giannis. LeBron's out, Rui's out. Just a thought. We'll see how much I'm right about this. Only time will tell. But I love any Giannis over tonight. I think he's going to go absolutely crazy. I love the Lakers too, scoring-wise. JJ called them out the other night for playing like shit against the Brooklyn Nets, who are 21 games under 500. Understandably so. And then Tyrese Halliburton just hit a game winner on the Bucks 2 nights ago. I'm sure they're going to come with some fight in them too. Both teams are on national television. It's on TNT. It's 30 Eastern, I believe, tonight. Or whenever you guys see this podcast, it'll be happening Thursday night. But yeah, just a thought. I really appreciate all you who decided to give this a listen. This is like my 4th fucking take of this episode. My one goal is just to improve every episode as they come along. And that's really it. Appreciate you guys. Have a good rest of your day.